They found the dog frozen at the threshold, tail down, chest heaving, eyes locked on the dark mouth of the warehouse. Deputy Marnie Holt had never seen Thor like this. Not in all the years she'd worked beside him. The German shepherd's paws wouldn't move, not an inch further. Then, through the silence, they heard it, a girl's whisper echoing from somewhere deep inside. Barely a breath, a sound too soft to be real. If you're drawn to quiet mysteries and haunting reveals, stay with us. Your support helps us tell stories that matter. The morning air still held the sting of winter, though spring was crawling across the valley in slow, reluctant steps. Dew clung to the tall grass along Mill Creek Road, and above the ridge, a pale sun pushed through streaks of fog. Deputy Marnie Holt's boots sank slightly in the damp earth as she stepped out of the cruiser, hand on Thor's harness. "Smell something?" she asked him softly. The K-9's ears twitched, nose to the ground, but his body was tense. He wasn't pulling forward like usual. He wasn't eager. That in itself set her nerves crawling. Thor was aging now, just over 7, silver beginning to thread through his muzzle. He had served faithfully through floods, search and rescues, drug busts, and one hostage standoff that Marnie still dreamed about. And never, not once, had he refused to go forward. Until now. The warehouse stood across the gravel lot, like a rotting tooth, tall, rusted, the paint on the steel siding curling like dry bark. It had been shut since '08, after the grain company folded and the owners vanished into bankruptcy court. Locals said it was haunted, of course. Small towns love their ghosts. But something about the place always made Marnie uneasy, even in daylight. She'd avoided driving past it unless she had to. Dispatch had said it was probably nothing. A 911 call from a number traced to a burner. A child's voice whispering something incoherent. Then the line went dead. The only reason Marnie hadn't dismissed it outright was a timestamp. Exactly 3:07 a.m. That was the same hour 3 other calls had come in over the past 6 months, all from unknown numbers. All cut off, and all supposedly coming from the warehouse coordinates. Still, this was the first time anyone had been dispatched to check it. And now Thor wouldn't go near it. "Easy," Marnie whispered, trying to steady her own breathing. The gravel crunched behind her. Sheriff Bill Huxley stepped out of his own truck. Shotgun slung lazily over one shoulder, eyes hidden behind his worn sunglasses. He was an old-school type, slow to talk, slower to trust. And today, already annoyed. "You tell me you dragged me out here for a prank call?" Marnie glanced at Thor. "You ever seen a K-9 lock up like that?" Bill studied the dog for a moment. Thor stood perfectly still, muscles tight, growling low in his chest. Not hostile, afraid. Bill muttered, removing his glasses. "Damn strange." Marnie took a cautious step toward the warehouse. The front doors were chained, but one side hung slightly off its track, just enough for someone to squeeze through. The place reeked of oil, rot, and old wood. Wind moaned to the broken eaves. Crows stirred on the roof and lifted into the sky, squawking. She drew her flashlight. "I'm going in," she said. Bill shifted. "Want backup?" Marnie hesitated. "If I don't come back out in 5 minutes." "You sure?" "I've got a weapon, and a good sense of bad vibes." She crouched, slipped through the narrow opening, and disappeared into the shadows. Thor whined behind her. Inside, the warehouse swallowed sound. The moment she stepped in, the quiet became so complete it rang her ears. Her boots echoed faintly on concrete slick with moisture and dust. The beam of her flashlight cut through columns of falling dust, revealing rusted catwalks overhead, stacks of abandoned crates, and long conveyor belts hanging like skeletons of some extinct beast. She moved carefully, gun at her side. "Hello?" she called, voice barely more than a murmur. "This is Deputy Holt. If someone's inside, I'm here to help." Nothing. Not a whisper. Not a footstep. Then, a faint thud from the far left of the warehouse. Her light swept toward it, catching a glint metal or reflection. She moved slowly, keeping her back to the wall, sweeping her beam across the floor. Old pallets, empty barrels, broken glass, and a child's shoe. Tiny, pink, Velcro strap. She knelt down beside it, heart suddenly thrumming louder than the silence around her. Her radio crackled in her vest. "Marnie, you okay?" Bill's voice sounded far away. Yeah, she whispered. Found something. The shoe was clean. Too clean to have been here long. Then came the sound. Whispering. Faint. From behind a row of stacked crates. She stood, hand tightening on her flashlight, and stepped around the crates. A cold gust moved through the gaps in the metal siding. Who's there? She said again. It's okay. You're not in trouble. The whispering stopped. There was no one behind the crates. Only a metal hatch in the floor. Bolted. Scuffed with fresh scratch marks. Marnie knelt, brushed away dust, and read the faint word stenciled on the hatch. Maintenance access, South Grain Tunnel. The latch had been broken open. She reached for the edge of the hatch and pried it open with the end of her flashlight. A narrow set of metal stairs led down into blackness. The whispering came again, louder now. Still faint. Still female. A child. No more than 8 or 9. Marnie's hand trembled slightly as she keyed her mic. Sheriff, there's a hatch in the floor, and I'm not alone down here. Silence. Then static. Then, don't go down there, came Bill's voice. But it wasn't over the radio. It came from behind her. Marnie turned sharply. The sheriff stood in the entryway. He hadn't said a word. His eyes met hers. He shook his head once, slow and deliberate. I didn't say anything, he muttered. They both stood still. The whispering grew louder, now clearer. Please? I'm cold. The words rose from the hatch like a voice carried on a winter draft. Marnie's face turned pale. She looked to the sheriff. We need lights. Backup. Fire and rescue. There's someone. I'll call it in, Bill said, but his eyes were narrowed. Suspicious. Marnie didn't wait. She descended the stairs. The metal groaned beneath her boots, and the smell hit her halfway down. Mildew, old grain. Something else underneath. Something faint and metallic. Blood? She emerged into a narrow underground corridor, barely 5 feet wide, with rusted pipes lining the ceiling and torn insulation hanging like vines. Her light cut across the floor, damp, uneven concrete, faint drag marks leading deeper in. The girl's voice came again. I don't want to be here anymore. Marnie followed the sound. Left, then right, then into a chamber that opened up suddenly, wide and round like a grain silo turned crypt. And in the center, a blanket. A child sat beneath it, still, shivering. Back to her. Marnie lowered her weapon. Hey, it's okay. You're safe now. I'm with the sheriff's office. Can you tell me your name? The girl didn't turn. She just whispered. They told me not to talk to you. Marnie froze. Who told you? The girl didn't answer. Marnie stepped closer. The girl's hair was matted. Her arms were thin, elbows bruised. Then, another voice whispered from behind Marnie. Closer than close. You shouldn't have come. She spun around. No one was there. When she turned back, the blanket was empty. The girl was gone. Only the shoe sat where she had been. The same one as before. Just one. As if she'd never been there at all. And far above, at the warehouse threshold, Thor began to bark. Not a warning bark. A morning one. Sheriff Bill Huxley watched the barking dog with a strange stillness. Thor paced back and forth outside the warehouse, growling low, ears pinned. He had not followed Marnie in. Hadn't even tried. Instead, he stayed at the broken entrance, as if some invisible force held him there, or as if he knew what was inside already. Bill touched the old scar under his collarbone, hidden by his jacket. It always burned when it got cold, or when he was about to lie. He keyed his mic. Holt, come in. Static. Again. Marnie, talk to me. Still nothing. He glanced at the sky. Pale clouds had gathered. Wind rising. It would rain soon. A spring storm. The kind that made the roads slick and the signals drop. The kind that made you remember things you'd spent years trying to forget. Bill didn't like this. Didn't like it one damn bit. He stepped to the opening and whistled sharply. Thor, come on. Inside. The dog didn't budge. Not even a twitch. Stubborn mutt, Bill muttered, ducking into the dark alone. The warehouse swallowed him like a cave. Cold air curled around his neck. He took out a flashlight. its beam casting long, swinging shadows over rusted machines and broken crates. The place stank of age and rot, a place long forgotten by everyone except those who still whispered its name when they shouldn't. He called out again. "Marnie." Nothing, just the sound of water dripping somewhere in the dark. Then a faint clang. His flashlight caught the open hatch in the floor. She'd gone down. Bill stood over the hole, frowning. He hadn't wanted it to come to this. He crouched, touched the edge of the hatch, and stared down into the black. The whispers had stopped now. Only silence. He reached for his radio but didn't speak into it. Instead, he whispered to himself, "You should have left it alone, Holt." Then he started down. Below, Marnie stood in the round chamber, heart pounding. The shoe in front of her was still warm. She touched it. It hadn't been there before. Had it? She didn't know anymore. The corridor behind her stretched long and narrow again, and now it felt different, like the walls were pulsing faintly. Breathing. She closed her eyes, steadying her breath. She remembered something her grandmother used to say. Some places were memories like skin, and some wounds never scab over. Marnie stepped away from the shoe, turned back, and began retracing her steps. That's when she heard the breathing. Not her own, not a child's. Heavy, male, close. She swung her flashlight. Nothing. But the breathing stopped as soon as she moved. She pressed herself against the wall, hand on her weapon. "This isn't a game," she called out. No response. She kept moving. Left, then right. At a dead end, she found a rusty door, bolted from the outside. A chain lay at her feet. She knelt and touched it. Fresh blood marked two of the links. And beside it, fingernail scratches on the floor. Marnie swallowed hard. Then, something struck her from behind. A hand, not hard enough to knock her out, but enough to spin her. A figure moved past the light, just the edge of a coat, the flick of a boot heel disappearing around a corner. She gave chase. "Stop. Police!" She rounded the corner and saw the man sprinting down another passage, tall, limping, fast despite it. He turned sharply, disappearing into a maze of tunnels. Marnie followed, lungs burning. Left again, then into a wide chamber lit faintly by slits in the ceiling. And there, under the broken beam of sunlight, stood a man she hadn't seen in 10 years. "Jackson," she said, stunned. He looked older, grayer, but she'd know those eyes anywhere. Jackson Rourke, father of Lily Rourke, the girl who vanished 8 years ago. He looked haunted, skinny, pale. "I told them she was here," he said quietly. Nobody listened. Marnie stepped forward slowly, hand still on her sidearm. "Jackson, you've been gone. Everyone thought you. That I ran. Yeah, figured they would. Why are you here?" He looked toward the far wall. "Because she still is." Marnie's skin chilled. "Who?" she asked, though she already knew. "Lily." "No one's seen her since." "She never left this place," he said. "She was taken, brought here, and she never got out." Marnie's jaw tightened. "By who?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out something small. A bracelet, woven plastic bands, pink and purple. Marnie remembered it. She found a photo of Lily wearing it in the Rourke's old house. "How'd you get that?" she whispered. "I found it last night. Down below." "Below what?" Jackson stared at her. Then, from the shadows behind her, another voice spoke. "Below the bodies." Marnie turned. Sheriff Huxley stood at the tunnel mouth, flashlight off, watching them both. She stepped back instinctively. Bill's voice was low, calm. He never stopped looking. "That's what they never told you." Marnie glanced between them. "You knew he was alive?" Bill shrugged. "I didn't say anything. What good would it do? You let people think he killed his daughter." Jackson didn't flinch. "She wasn't supposed to be here," he said again. "It was meant to scare me. That's all. To keep me quiet." Marnie felt the weight of something falling into place, like a puzzle edge she hadn't seen before. "You were a deputy," she said, looking at Jackson. He nodded. "Before I saw what was happening. Before I tried to stop it." Bill sighed. "Not now," he muttered. But Jackson didn't stop. They used the warehouse, he said, for transport, for hiding things. People, girls. Marnie's voice turned hoarse. You mean human trafficking? Yes, and the sheriff's office. Not everyone, Bill interrupted. Marnie turned slowly. But you... Bill's face was unreadable. We thought it was over. We made it stop. Or tried to. You buried it, she whispered. His voice dropped. To protect the department. And this town. Marnie felt sick. You were supposed to protect the children. I did what I could, Bill said. You don't understand how deep it went. You weren't here back then. But you're still here now, she snapped. Jackson stepped forward. He's not the worst of them. He's just the last one left. A silence stretched. Then a soft sound broke it. A child's whisper. Again. Only now it was right beside Marnie's ear. He's lying. She spun, flashlight sweeping. The corridor was empty. Then the whisper came again. This time from behind Jackson. He let them in. Jackson turned sharply and something slammed into him. He fell hard, groaning, blood seeping from a cut above his temple. A third man stood in the tunnel now. Marnie's heart nearly stopped. Deputy Royce, still on the force. Quiet, clean record. Friendly. He held a length of pipe, and his face was blank. You weren't supposed to come back, Jack, he said. Marnie drew her weapon. Drop it. But he was already running, through a side tunnel. She fired, once missed. Then she was after him, boots pounding, breath ragged. Behind her, Jackson called out, Don't trust him. But she didn't stop. By the time Marnie emerged back into the warehouse, the sky had darkened and the rain had begun. She was soaked in seconds. She sprinted to her radio. Officer down. Officer down. Suspect in flight. Request immediate backup. Coordinates. Old grain warehouse on Mill Creek. Static answered. No dispatch. No signal. And Thor was gone. His leash lay on the ground. Fresh paw prints in the mud, leading into the woods. And beside them, small footprints. A child's. Bear, walking beside the dog. By the time reinforcements arrived, the rain had turned to a steady downpour, beating on the rusted roof like a slow drum. Deputies fanned out across the warehouse grounds, combing the area with flashlights, voices echoing across the gravel yard. No sign of Thor. No sign of the girl. No sign of Deputy Royce. Marnie stood in the hatch opening, soaked, hands trembling. Her boots were caked with mud and blood. Jackson's blood, still smeared across her shirt from when she tried to stop the bleeding. He was unconscious when the medics pulled him out, pale, breathing shallow. And all he'd managed to whisper before blacking out was one word. Locker. Sheriff Huxley hadn't spoken since then. He stood off to the side, arms crossed, jaw clenched, refusing to meet her eyes. Something inside Marnie had cracked. Not panic, not fear, something deeper, something cold and steady. It was a kind of clarity you only felt when all the stories you'd been told as a child, the safe ones, the ones about protectors and heroes, shattered. Now all she wanted was the truth. They pried open the hatch to the old sublevel fully, rigged temporary lights, and sent in a rescue crew. But the girl was gone. No sign of a living child. No body, either. Just marks in the dirt, scuff patterns, a drag trail, and fingerprints on the steel pipes, too small to belong to any adult. But what made Marnie's stomach twist was the scratch marks on the inside of the old locker that had been bolted into the wall at the far end of the underground corridor. They found it locked shut, hidden behind an old tarp. Inside, a pile of children's clothes. Most rotted, some recent, and the name Lily Rourke carved into the inner door, beneath dozens of other scratch names. Some initials, some just tally marks. 23 of them. Later, back at the station, Marnie sat at her desk in soaked clothes, staring at the girl's shoe on the table in front of her. Bill stood in the doorway, silent. Why didn't you say something? She finally asked. His voice was hoarse. I tried to stop it. Years ago. By covering it up? He didn't answer. You let Jackson take the fall. He was going to tell the feds. Said he had proof. I told him that kind of thing would get him killed. I thought Maybe if he disappeared, it would keep the heat off long enough for the others to back off. And Lily? He looked away. I didn't know they'd taken her. Not until it was too late. But you never went after them. He met her eyes. I was scared, Marnie. For once, his voice didn't sound like a sheriff's. It sounded like a broken man's. You knew Royce was part of it? I suspected. Why didn't you say anything? Because people in this town trust a badge, he said quietly, even when it's dirty. Marnie nodded slowly, then stood. Not anymore. She spent the next 2 days alone, retracing every tunnel, every offshoot from the warehouse. She slept in her cruiser, ate granola bars, refused help. It was on the third night that she found Thor. He was sitting beside the creek, a quarter-mile east of the warehouse. Still, muddy, tail curled around him. He didn't run when she approached, just looked at her. She saw something clamped in his mouth, a scrap of fabric. She knelt and took it from him. It was part of a child's nightgown, soaked and torn. And when she looked up again, Thor was walking, not toward the station, not toward town, toward the woods. She followed. They hiked through thick brush, rain dripping from the pines, until Thor stopped at a clearing with an old hunting shack. Abandoned, the roof half collapsed, vines climbing the walls. Inside, beneath a floorboard loose with rot, Marnie found a tin box wrapped in plastic. Inside the box, photos, receipts, maps with routes marked, names, dates, and a journal. The first page read, "If you're reading this, I'm already dead, but maybe Lily isn't." It was Jackson's handwriting. He had documented everything, every drop point, every girl he tried to save, and the ones he didn't. And beneath the journal, taped to the lid, a tiny, folded drawing, crayon on paper, stick figures, a tall man, a little girl, a dog. They were all holding hands. At the bottom, scrawled in shaky letters, "Me and Daddy and Thor." A week later, the arrest began. 2 more deputies, a retired judge, and the warehouse owner's son, long assumed to have left the country, pulled off a fishing boat on the eastern shore. Jackson Rourke never woke up. He died 2 days after the incident. Brain hemorrhage. They buried him quietly. No service. Marnie went alone. Thor sat beside her, still as a statue. 1 month later, she stood again outside the warehouse, now cordoned off, padlocked, under federal control. But she wasn't looking at the building. She was staring at the treeline, where once again the wind carried a sound faint and small. A whisper. "Thank you." Marnie knelt beside Thor. The dog didn't bark. He just sat, ears forward, watching something neither of them could see. And behind them, the town kept moving, oblivious, as if nothing had happened at all.